This video is about planning. I'll brief only on the important points about each and every step of the planning cycle. Planning is a systematic approach. It not only helps us to avoid mistakes, it also helps us to recognize hidden opportunities upon identifying the problem. It bridges between where we are and where we really want to go. The definition of planning was given by Banfield. He defined it as a plan is a decision about a course of action. There are three uses of planning, and if we have a plan in hand, we can match the limited resources with many problems. We can also eliminate wasteful expenditure or duplication of such expenditure. We can develop the best course of action for that plan in order to achieve our objectives. There are four types of health planning which was given by Spiegel and Associates. And we have problem solving planning. If there is a problem and we identify it, and when we want to resolve that problem, we go for this problem solving program. For example, if there is a problem of dental fluorosis in a community, a plan which solves this problem comes under this particular category of problem solving program. And the next one is program planning. This is about designing a particular course of action for a circumscribed health problem. For example, we can say planning a program such as school-based fluoride mouth rinse program for children. That is a program, so it comes under this category. The third one is coordination of efforts and activities planning. It increases the availability and efficiency, productivity and effectiveness of a program when we have a plan so that we can coordinate various things. The fourth one is allocation of resources. It helps us to select best alternatives to achieve a particular goal when we have limited resources. For example, in an area where the pit and fissure caries is high, and if we have planned for fluoride mouth rinse program, we can replace it with a sealant program which can be effective. That comes under allocation of resources planning program. Moving on to the important content, steps in planning. As mentioned earlier, planning is a systematic approach. There are various steps in planning, but some steps play a vital role in planning process. The first step starts with identifying the problem, setting priorities, then developing specific goals and objectives, determining alternative strategies, and finding various methods of implementation. Identifying the problem is the first step in the planning process. Conducting a needs assessment is very important as it identifies the cause of the problem, the extent and severity of the problem, and also in obtaining baseline information and amount of progress which is achieved in solving that particular problem. The next step in the planning process would be determining priorities. But before setting priorities, we need to do some data analysis or know about some basic information on certain things such as information on population, educational status of the community, average income of the community, and community's public transportation. And also about the healthcare facilities in the community, fluoride content of the water, and political status of the community, etc. The next step in the planning cycle is determining priorities. After we collect the baseline information about the population, we move on to this step. With limited resources, it becomes necessary to establish priorities in order to allow the most efficient allocation of resources that we have. A health advisory committee or task force representing which consists of consumers, community leaders and health providers should be established to assist in the development of policies and priorities. While setting priorities, the planner must ask the questions such as how serious is the problem, the percentage of population at risk in order to identify the target group. For example, if more children are affected with dental caries, then the plan should be designed to address the problem of dental caries only. The next step in the planning process is development of program goals, objectives, and activities. A goal is defined as the ultimate desired step towards which objectives and resources are directed. The objectives should always be precise, more specific, should describe the end results in a measurable way. The objectives should always specify these questions. What refers to the nature of the situation or condition to be obtained. Who refers to the particular group or portion of the environment in which the attainment is desired. Where refers to the geographic area of the program, and when refers to the time at which the desired situation is intended to exist. And finally, extent refers to the scope and magnitude of the situation or condition to be attained. The next step is resource identification. There are various resources. Actually, the term resources implies the manpower, money, materials, skills, knowledge, technique, time, etc. These are the four criteria which are used to determine what resources should be used. Appropriateness is one criteria. It is the most suitable resource to get the job done. Adequacy, the extent to which resources would complete the job. Effectiveness, how capable the resources are at fulfilling the objective. Efficiency, it costs in terms of money and amount of time expended to complete the job. The next step in planning process is identifying constraints. The constraints may result from various things such as organizational policies. For example, a restrictive government policy can be a constraint. The next one, resource limitations such as lack of funding or labor shortage. And we might also have community characteristics such as negative attitude that prevails among the community. One of the best ways to identify constraints is to bring together a group of concerned citizens who are familiar with the local politics and community structures. In this way, we can not only identify constraints and also they can offer some alternative strategies to meet the goals. The next step is identifying alternative strategies. Being aware of the existing constraints and given the available resources, the planner should then consider alternative sources of action that might be effective in attaining the objectives. A planner should always choose an activity that is most effective without any limitations when closely examined. The next step is developing implementation strategies. An implementation strategy for each activity is complete only when these questions are answered. We have 6 questions. You can remember it as 4 W's and 2 H's in an easy way. The first question would be why? Why should the effect of the objective to be achieved? What are all the activities that are required to achieve the objective? Who is involved or who is responsible for each activity? When, as in chronological sequence, when should each activity happen? How can the materials, methods and techniques be used? How much of the materials and time is required to for this program? So these are all the various questions that should be asked while developing implementation strategies. You can remember it as 4 W's and 2 H's: why, what, who and when, how and how much. The next step in the planning process is implementation. Implementation is the process of putting the plan into action. Most of the health problems can be divided into 4 phases, which should always occur in this sequence. The first phase is pilot phase. It is actually the development which proceeds on trial and error basis. The next phase would be the control phase, where a model of a particular program strategy is run under regulatory conditions to judge its effectiveness. And then comes the actualization phase, where a model of the program strategy is subjected to realistic operating conditions. Then the final phase would be the operational phase, in which the program is an ongoing part of the structure. These are the 4 phases through which the implementation process occurs. The next step in the planning cycle is monitoring. Monitoring refers to the maintenance of an ongoing watch over the activities of a health service. It raises us some questions such as, what are we doing at the present moment? What does it cost in resources to do what and for whom? These things comes under monitoring. The final step in the planning cycle is evaluation. Evaluation measures the degree to which objectives and targets are fulfilled and also the quality of results that are obtained. This was given by WHO in 1967. Measurements of those results may be direct or indirect. Direct measures are those which assess changes in oral health due to the program being evaluated, whereas indirect measures are those which are necessary where it is not practicable to measure directly any changes in health. And we have various criteria which are used in the evaluation of dental services, which includes effectiveness. Effectiveness raises the question, have the stated objectives been achieved? If the stated objectives have been achieved, which means the effectiveness of the program has been achieved. Then we have efficiency. Efficiency raises the question, what has been the cost in manpower or finance in relation to the output of the program? Appropriateness. Is the program acceptable to both the consumers and providers? And do the priorities reflect a proper interpretation of the needs of the population? This is appropriateness. Finally, we have adequacy. Has the intended coverage of the target population been achieved and are the services really available? These 4 are the major criteria which we use when we evaluate dental health services. So with that, we went through all the planning process. Just to have a recap, let's go through it once again. First, we have to identify the problem and we have to collect the data based on needs assessment and then analyze the problem. And we have to determine, or we have to go for setting priorities and then develop goals, objectives and activities, identify constraints based on the resources available and find alternative strategies. Then choose the appropriate activity that is found most effective, develop implementation strategies and implement the plan, then monitor and finally evaluate the plan. This is the entire planning process. I hope this video is very useful when you read about it or when you can watch this video. I hope you find this very useful. Thank you for watching this video.